Piers Morgan arrived at the ITV studios before sunrise, the chilly London air nipping at his jawline as he stepped out of the black car that delivered him. He didn't bother to look at the small crowd waiting outside. They always gathered for the morning shows, clutching coffee cups and camera phones, ready to snap whatever drama the day would bring. Today, though, Piers felt a familiar fire under his ribs, a simmering irritation he'd been carrying since he accepted Lorraine Kelly's producer's invitation. He told himself it was harmless, a quick interview to promote his latest book and talk show. But deep down, he knew Lorraine never brought him on without expecting sparks. The woman smiled like a schoolteacher but questioned like a barrister. And lately, she'd been openly critical of his on-air blow-ups. He walked through the corridors, nodding curtly at crew members, exchanging the minimal pleasantries required. The producers briefed him quickly, questions about his book, a segment on political correctness, then a discussion about a particularly heated interview he'd done the week before. That last part annoyed him immediately. "I'm not here for a trial," he muttered, flipping through the cue notes. "I'm here to talk about the work." One of the producers gave him a tight smile. "Lorraine will handle it gently." Piers snorted. "Lorraine doesn't do gentle. She does polite interrogation." Still, he sat in the green room, sipping a too-hot tea, waiting for the signal. The walls hummed with the energy of a live morning show, running footsteps, muffled countdowns, a hair and makeup artist dashing between dressing rooms. His knee bounced restlessly. He was aware of the cameras outside, the headlines waiting to erupt if he said something, anything, controversial. And he knew Lorraine didn't mind controversy as long as she didn't have to hold it afterward. When a stagehand poked her head in, 2 minutes, Mr. Morgan, he stood up, rolled his shoulders back, and took a slow breath. He'd done this thousands of times. He was ready. Lorraine greeted him on stage with her trademark warm smile, but Piers felt the tension beneath it immediately. She rarely hid annoyance well, she just dressed it in kindness. The audience applauded, the cameras rolled, and the soft glow of the studio lights washed over everything. "It's lovely to have you with us," Lorraine began, voice smooth as a morning latte. "Lovely to be back," Piers replied. He matched her tone, but everyone could see the faint challenge in his eyes. They eased into the interview, touching on his book. Piers spoke confidently, cutting a strong silhouette in his tailored suit as he explained his views on free speech, public debate, and modern media. Lorraine listened politely, occasionally nodding, occasionally smiling, always guiding him back to safer ground. Then she shifted her cue cards. "And now," she said gently, "I have to ask, last week's interview caused quite a stir. A lot of viewers felt you, went a bit too far. Looking back, do you think perhaps the criticism is fair?" Piers stiffened. He knew this was coming. But the wording, "a bit too far," struck a nerve. "No, Lorraine," he said, leaning forward. "I don't think holding people accountable is going too far. What's too far is this culture of pretending everything is fine when it isn't." Lorraine blinked calmly. "But shouting at a guest." "I didn't shout," Piers snapped before he could soften it. "I spoke firmly." Lorraine kept her composure, but the shift was unmistakable. The audience sensed it, the air tightened. "Well," she tried again, "some would say that your tone policing." Piers threw up a hand, half laughing. "That's all this is. People don't like hearing uncomfortable truths, so they attack the tone rather than the content." Lorraine's lips thinned, though she kept smiling. "Piers, you must admit there's a difference between uncomfortable truths and being unnecessarily combative." Piers leaned back, crossing his arms. "Lorraine, if I were unnecessarily combative, I wouldn't be invited back on shows like this, would I?" Lorraine's eyebrows lifted. "You might be surprised." The audience let out a small ripple of, "Ooh." Lorraine continued, flipping another card. "And speaking of discomfort," she said, "you've also been criticized lately for comments about young activists. Some have called your remarks dismissive and—" "Oh, for heaven's sake," Piers interrupted, throwing his hands slightly upward. "Every week it's something else. Am I allowed to disagree with anyone under 30 without being labeled a villain?" Lorraine, still calm, folded her hands. "You're allowed to disagree, yes. But the way you do it, it's always the way I do it," Piers said, jabbing a finger at the table. "Never what I'm actually saying. That's the real problem." Lorraine exhaled softly, a polite smile masking her growing irritation. "Piers, you're here to discuss your book. And you're here," he cut in, voice sharpening, "to stir up drama for ratings." A collective gasp filled the studio. Lorraine's expression froze. The set went silent except for the faint hum of the cameras. A producer offstage widened his eyes, giving frantic hand signals that Piers ignored completely. "Well," Lorraine said slowly, "if that's how you feel, perhaps we should wrap up this segment early." "Maybe you should," Piers replied, rising slightly in his seat as if ready to walk off himself. "I didn't come here to be lectured." Lorraine straightened in her chair, the warmth now fully gone from her voice. "No one's lecturing you, Piers. But this is my show, and we do things respectfully here." "And I'm being respectful," Piers shot back. "You're the one poking the bear." The audience murmured nervously. A crew member moved closer to the stage. Lorraine looked toward the cameras, her tone controlled but icy. Backstage after the commercial break, the energy in the studio had shifted from morning show cheerfulness to a brittle, buzzing chaos. Crew members clustered in tight groups, whispering urgently, their eyes darting toward the corridor where Piers had disappeared only minutes earlier. Producers tapped on earpieces, issuing clipped commands. Someone was updating social media monitors, another was checking whether the comment section on the livestream had already ignited. It had. The numbers blinked upward in real time. Lorraine Kelly sat in her dressing room for a moment, breathing deeply as a makeup artist dabbed powder onto her cheek. The woman's hands trembled slightly, trying to hide it. Lorraine waved her away gently. "It's all right, love," she murmured. "I've handled worse." But she hadn't handled this in a long time. Not someone storming off her show mid-segment. Not someone as polarizing, and headline magnetic, as Piers Morgan. She knew exactly what this would look like online. Lorraine Kelly kicks Piers Morgan off her set. Lorraine embarrasses Piers live on air. Lorraine destroys Morgan. She didn't crave viral moments, but she wasn't naive, either. Morning television thrived on little ripples of scandal. Yet beneath her professionalism, she was irritated, no, furious. She hadn't invited Piers to trap him. She had done what she always did, ask questions people were already discussing. And he had exploded like a spark thrown into dry grass. A knock came at the door. Her lead producer, Emma, stepped in, shutting it behind her. "He's still here," Emma said quietly. "Security's keeping an eye on him. He's pacing the back corridor." Lorraine groaned. "Oh, let him pace. What do you want to do?" Emma asked. "We can cut the rest of the segment. Pretend he had somewhere to be." Lorraine lifted her chin. "No, bring him back." Emma blinked. "You want him back. After that, I'm not letting him dictate the narrative," Lorraine said, standing. "If he wants to throw a tantrum, he can do it in a chair, not down the hallway." Emma hesitated but nodded. "All right, I'll get him." Lorraine returned to the set as the countdown resumed. The audience buzzed with anticipation, whispers swirled as she settled into her seat. She gave them a calm, reassuring smile, the one she used when things went sideways on live TV. "Welcome back," she said into the camera, her tone even. "We had a little, lively discussion before the break, and we're going to continue it, with respect." There was a pause. The camera cut to the side entrance. Piers Morgan walked back onto the set. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't pretending. He came in stiffly, adjusting his jacket as if trying to regain the authority he'd lost by walking off in the first place. The audience murmured in shock, half surprised he'd returned, half wondering if the fireworks were about to get even brighter. Lorraine gestured to the chair. "Please," she said calmly. Piers sat, folding his hands tightly in his lap. Not a trace of charm. Just bristling annoyance. Lorraine began carefully, speaking slowly so her words couldn't be twisted. "Piers, you left before we could finish the segment. I'd like to continue the conversation, if you're willing." Piers exhaled sharply. "I left because I'm tired of being dragged onto shows to be berated for having opinions." "You weren't being berated," Lorraine replied. "You were being asked simple questions." "They weren't simple," he snapped, pointing at the cue cards on her table. "They were loaded. They were relevant," she countered. "Your behavior last week was in the news. We address the news here. In my book," Piers said, "the reason I came here in the first place. We discussed your book. For 3 minutes," he said. "Then you jumped straight into the controversy, like every other outlet desperate for clicks." Lorraine felt her jaw tighten. "Piers, this is not about clicks. This is morning television. Our viewers expect us to tackle the stories they're talking about. And they're talking about me," he said firmly. "But not because of anything I actually say. Only because I refuse to play the politically correct game." Lorraine leaned in slightly. "This isn't about political correctness. This is about manners. Piers scoffed. Manners? Really? That's rich, considering you ambushed me on live TV. I didn't ambush you. I asked what everyone else is asking. Piers leaned forward as well, matching her posture, his tone dropping. You wanted drama. I wanted honesty, she replied. You wanted a moment. Lorraine's patience began to snap. Piers, if I wanted a moment, I wouldn't have spent 30 years building a career on kindness and reliability. I've interviewed world leaders, grieving families, and teenagers with more composure than you've shown today. The audience gasped softly. Piers opened his mouth, stunned. You think you're the only one who deals with criticism. Lorraine continued. You think you're the only one who gets attacked on social media. You think you're the only person who gets called names. But the difference between us, Piers, is that I don't lash out at everyone around me when it happens. Piers blinked, taken aback. For a moment, he seemed to lose his footing. His expression softened, just slightly, before hardening again. You're twisting this, he said, though his voice was quieter now. You're making me out to be some sort of monster. No, Lorraine said, I'm making you out to be exactly what you are today, someone who came onto this show spoiling for a fight. Piers rubbed his forehead, a sign of stress he rarely let the public see. I just wanted a fair conversation. And you could have had one, she replied gently. If you didn't assume the worst of me from the start. There was a long silence. The audience sat still. The crew stood frozen behind the cameras. Even the hum of the lights felt quieter. For the first time since sitting down, Piers seemed to wrestle inwardly. He stared at his hands, then at Lorraine, then at the floor. He took a deep breath.